London Market Forums, bringing insurance professionals together.
So, Rob, very warm welcome to you. Thank you for joining us today. It's really very much appreciated. You know, we had a chat a couple of weeks ago. You've been in the London market for, is it 35 years? I think it's around that time. And during that time, you would have seen all sorts of things. But to get us started, perhaps you'd just like to just explain a little bit about your journey, because most of the people here on this call, many of them are at the start of their journey. Maybe they've been here 2, 3, 5, maybe 10 years, but at the start of their journey. And they'd love to know the journey that you went on to end up in the position you're in now, CEO of Charles Taylor Group.
Sure, Roger. And firstly, you know, can I say thank you very much for having me. Charles Taylor are absolutely delighted to support this initiative. You know what you're doing, and I know the team are really pleased with being able to be connected with you all. And I certainly am delighted to have this opportunity. So yes, 35 years sounds a long old time when you sort of mention it out like that. It's probably much longer than most of the people have been around on the planet on this call, but say la vie. So I've been very fortunate in so far as that I feel I've kind of been able to circumnavigate the entirety of the insurance sort of ecosystem. I started, you know, back in '84. As an underwriter, and then, you know, did various roles with different underwriting companies, and then became a broker actually on the wholesale side, which was slightly different, and then moved into the retail side, and then became a CEO of Aon, running initially the sort of the commercial and corporate business, and then the whole of the UK, and then, you know, the UK, Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And then I decided, no, I would go back to where I started from and jumped ship to AXA to run, you know, globally as a CEO, the corporate insurance company there. And of course, you know, went on to go and acquire XL Group. And then, you know, most recently, started in with Charles Taylor. So I've gone from sort of underwriting, broking, to now sort of the insurance services, and it's really quite kind of fascinating. Just give you a quick sort of insight, because I think it's really relevant when we think about what goes on further forward. You know, if you think about, you know, the people journey that I've been on. When I first started in insurance, it was incredibly hierarchical. I mean, literally, I was nervous as hell walking down the corridor to this sort of big oak paneled room where the chief, you know, underwriting officer was. It was very one-dimensional. It was like one office. That was it. We didn't see anybody else. We were all just self-sufficient in that one office, you know, very hierarchical, real, you know, not much diversity. And then throughout my entire career, you know, we've become much more diverse. There's been so much more opportunity. You know, at that time, it was all very much only when someone retires do you get a chance to take on the position. There was absolutely no potential. I remember being sort of told, ripe old age of 20 when I'd been there, because I went straight from school, you know, 2 years, you know, well, you know, we've promoted you now to, you know, grade 2. And, you know, normally that takes 4 years. So you're going to have to wait at least 5 more years before you get to grade 3. It was like, blimey, you're telling me I'm not going to get another chance to get a pay rise for 5 years. I'm out of here. So anyway, so that's the sort of the people kind of journey. And now I'm interacting with people from global, you know, I'm interacting from, you know, so much more knowledge around. And then I think about the tech journey. You know, when I arrived, you know, the most high-tech piece of equipment, which, by the way, still took me an awful lot to get used to, was a dictaphone, right? And it was a shared dictaphone that we would kind of have. You know, then at some point, I can't remember when, we had fax machines. We used to get faxes. It used to be, you know, the big excitement of the day was to see if that fax was for you or if you got to send one. And then it was like, okay, there's these things called computers. Oh my gosh, what are those? And then we had email, but they're only internal emails to those in your own building. And then of course it went sort of wider. And now when you think about it, we've got, you know, mobile phones, we've got laptops, we're connecting with people around the world from this. It's an incredible journey over the last sort of, you know, 30 odd sort of years. And all I would say is, I think the next 30 years is going to be equally as exciting and compelling. And I think it's going to be a wonderful opportunity for the world, but particularly for our industry.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, what we've heard this week is that, you know, a lot of people have been on a journey, a lot of people shared their experiences as well. But one thing that seems to be a common thread is that I think people are seeing the job of the future to be quite different from what it is at the moment. So, you know, we looked at the whole area of upskilling, you know, digital skills, to be honest with you, because, you know, one thing is certain, technology is coming into the workplace at a rapid rate, certainly in our industry, which has been probably behind the curve when it comes to adoption of technology. And so the modern manager, the manager of the future, is going to have that sort of tool set. It's going to have that at least an understanding, a sort of of the landscape. They don't have to be technologists. They don't have to understand coding, but they certainly need to understand the digital landscape. I mean, you must, as you said, you know, with the fax machine and all the rest of it. I remember the first fax machine coming into the building that I worked in, and there was only one lady that was allowed to operate it. We weren't allowed to touch this thing. It was like, literally, it was the most precious thing in the building. And she was a bit of a dragon, this lady. We were all scared of her. So yeah, we all have memories of how technology came in and how it changed things. But yeah, it's quite an interesting period of time we now find ourselves in. Absolutely. And Rob, I mean, obviously, you know, the last 8 months have been an exceptional time. You've obviously come into Charles Taylor at that time, but as a marketplace, I mean, what do you think has actually been one of the key things that stood out for you over the last 8 months about how the markets responded to this challenge of suddenly one day us all being an EC3 and the next day suddenly we're not? How's the market responded in your eyes?
So let me give you my the way, you know, as a diehard insurance sort of, I know it's difficult now to say what I truly am, whether it's broker, you know, insurer or services provider, but let's just call it diehard insurance person. You know, my personal journey, which I think sort of sums up a little bit where we've all gone, is, you know, I actually was interviewed for this role and got the role without actually meeting anybody, without actually visiting where the premises was, and without being able to have any sense of what people were like, you know, shoulders down. So, you know, and you know, throughout my career, I've kind of relied on both the IQ and EQ. I think, you know, fact-based decision-making for leaders is really, really important. You don't want that sort of revolving door where you're guided by whoever's the last person to have given you, you know, the latest idea. So it's fact-based, you know, and insights and correlation, that is really, really important. But also I found, particularly as you go through, you know, the levels of management and leadership, you need that sort of element of emotional understanding. I'm not saying we have to be psychologists, although I've often felt that would really help and could have really helped me. But I think it's, you know, I've often been guided by, you know, how do I feel about this interaction? How do I feel about this conversation? How do I think this individual and I would get on? And it's really, really difficult to be able to have that sort of connection when it's just through a screen and you've not got that informality that you would ordinarily have through the touch points, that seeing that body language of how someone sort of reacts. So I think, you know, for my own sake, I've been able to kind of get there. And actually, when I look and I talk to, you know, whether it's my peers or friends, you know, that are in the market, I think everyone in the industry has really, really responded very well to where we are. I do think there's a caveat there. I think we have to be careful in terms of, our reputation, how we are seen as an industry to handle, the COVID sort of claims and the ramification of the COVID in terms of risk appetites, pricing, how we look after our clients. But, essentially, I think we've done really, really well. And I think the three sort of aspects that I would say as an industry, we've really had to work hard has been on this aspect of belonging, making people, really understand the vision and mission of the business. I think, people used to the belonging of an office, is different in this world. Then I think this connection is really, really important, Roger. It's really feeling people that they know, who's doing what and how they feel connected to what's going on. And then the third aspect is, I think, supported. I know a lot of people have said we're kind of in it together, but it's really important that people feel in this, that they are supported, that they understand, what good looks like. They understand what it is we're trying to achieve. They understand the pain, the gain points, how they fit into that. So that's why sort of, MI, management information, is really, really important. I talk here a lot about focus, because I think it's very easy for people to get distracted. I articulate focus as financial outcomes, how you operate, customer. It's the heart of the word. It should be the heart of everything we think and do. You as unmatched talent. I actually stole that from Greg Casadei. Don't mention that to him. And then S is strategy. It underpins it all. What is it we're trying to achieve? But, I think we need, and I think we've done well. And I think companies that come through this and will have much stronger positioning. And I think, we're in that sort of Nike swoosh for a long while here, but will truly be companies that have been able to inspire both themselves, their clients, be really considerate around how, they can operate more efficiently and effectively and supportive for their clients. And I think technology plays a massive part in that. But we are still a people business, and I think people trust people, and yes, we can get the technology. So that's how I would say. I think we've done pretty well. But I think it's going to be like this for a while. And I think these skills that I think have been honed, they need to continue to be honed even further going forward.
Yes, thank you, Rob. It's one thing we have heard throughout this week is that younger professionals are feeling it a little bit. They're feeling that perhaps the sort of normal learning opportunities that they would have had are not there. Obviously, many people learn by watching another person in the workplace, listening to them, as you quite rightly pointed out, that body language as well. And, we've spoken this week and previously to young brokers and young underwriters who've said, I think I'm just missing out currently on that sort of direct interface with those people. Yes, I can do it from behind a screen, but I don't know necessarily how, as an underwriter, to say no to a broker, for instance, when a risk comes in. That's a challenge, isn't it, Rob? It is
very much so. And I think also, the other aspect that kind of links into that is, in the old days, or even, before we were in this sort of world, you could have a multitude of conversations to really get real clarity over one particular topic, Whereas now, when you're sort of set for your 15 minutes or half an hour on screen and you finish, if you suddenly have 1 minute after, oh gosh, I forgot to ask that, or I wasn't really sure about that. It's like, oh my gosh, how do I go and set that up? And, sadly, we've felt, we've lost, so many sort of good connections, and we're working very hard. We've got a great graduate program, but I know, because I'm also chairing a school in my county in Essex as a governing committee, that, actually it's been incredibly challenging for, our graduates and school leavers to be able to have sort of work experiences. Well, because no one can sort of give you a work experience. Well, what are you going to do? How are you going to learn? So we've got to get better at lots of those things, and there's lots of knowledge. And I think, that curiosity that exists within us all, I really would nurture that and encourage that, because that's what's going to be the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for those comments, Rob. I mean, one thing that we have learned this week, so there's some interesting things come out, and that's the whole idea of these sorts of conferences, to enable people to actually put on the table some ideas that other people can sort of pick up on. And, you know, we've heard a few things. One thing, common thread, was that people need, in this period of time, need to take a degree of responsibility and accountability for pushing themselves forward as well. You know, it's not always going to be the case that the company pulls them. It's a case that they need to push themselves in these unique times. The second point that was made, which was quite interesting, about learning on the job, was that some companies have come up with this tag team sort of environment where, you know, if perhaps a senior underwriter or senior broker or head of finance or whatever experiences a problem, they don't just deal with it themselves, but they actually say, well, actually, I'm going to actually bring in via Teams or Zoom or whatever, I'm going to bring in Jenny and John and Fred and Jane and allow them to learn about that problem. Yeah. They would normally do that in the workplace, of course, because someone would say, oh my goodness, what have we got here? And everybody goes, what's that? that doesn't exist in the Zoom world. So that tag team might be quite useful. How do you feel about that?
No, I do. And just to build on that, Roger, you know, if you think about it, we are actually far more inclusive now than we've ever been. You know, in the past, we would be inclusive because we could see people in the office, oh, can I grab you? Well, actually, if you know, by using this right, you know, you can go across time zones, you can go across locations, you can involve, you know, a much broader cross section of people. But it does, you know, make you have to work harder, does make you have to work smarter, and you have to be in and of itself more inclusive in your own mind. You know, to your point, you know, take control, you know, over yourself. Well, you know, you have got far more control over what your time is and what you're spending it on. You know, actually, you need to be in control about making sure you're not overworked, that you're not pushing yourself so far from it. Whereas, you know, in the past, people could see it and say, do you know what? I've seen, you know, you were here first thing in the morning, here last night, or, you know, I see you banging out that thing. You have not left your computer for 3 hours. You know, you need a break, grab a coffee, or whatever. People can't see that. So I think you're spot on. You know, inclusivity and ownership, responsibility is critical. It's always been there, but I think it's even more prevalent in the current environment we're in.
Thank you for that. One of the polls that we did earlier in the week actually talked about, we asked the audience how they felt about the London market in particular, but it's about the wider insurance community as well. What attracts them? Because one of the things that we looked at on Wednesday was how we bring talent into the marketplace. Yeah. That's always been a slight challenge for us. I mean, we've done well, and we've got obviously 53,000 great people in our market. But the issue has always been, where do we get them from? How do we bring them in? And we know that, you know, a lot of universities and schools that I speak to say they never even hear from anybody in the insurance industry. So therefore, their students wouldn't think about coming into the market. You know, we've tried to sort of come up with schemes to make that more attractive. But I mean, how can we sort of improve on that? One of the, just before you answer on that point, Rob, but one of the things that we asked the audience was what makes, you know, the London market attractive. And the thing that came through overwhelmingly in the poll was a sense of community. Okay, so it's very clear that the thing that people value the most about the London market is the relationship that they have with other people, which is very different actually to a certain extent from other markets I've worked in around the world. I know you've worked in Europe. I've worked in Asia as well and stuff like that. And the markets there are slightly different how they operate to the London market. You know, it's more of a community feel here. You know, what can people do, you know, to make sure that they continue with those relationships?
So I mean, Roger, I think that first point of yours in terms of attracting, you know, talent and into insurance has always been there since even when I went into insurance. I remember, you know, talking with a great colleague, great friend in the end, and I sort of said, "How did you end up in insurance?" He said, "My father knew no one at the bank." You know, so you know, and it's kind of it kind of feels as if that is the way forward, and actually it's only because I've had this luxurious, you know, position of having all these years in the insurance that, I can absolutely, with total and utter confidence and belief, say it is the most spectacular industry you could ever hope to go into. You can achieve practically anything you want. You can go places that you might never have thought you would be able to get to. I've had experiences, I've created memories, I've learned so much. So I'm a passionate believer in terms of the industry per se. I do think we need to work ever hard at really, attracting a broader, level of talent and diversity of talent. I think we need to make it easier. I think sometimes the London market is something special, but equally that then creates in and of itself a certain barrier because people feel, you need to be. And I don't think that's the case, anymore. I think we've really turned as an industry from being incredibly reactive. I go back to when I first started, it was like, here was my part of stuff I had to do, and I'd only get to the stuff that was 30 days old. If you imagine if you don't answer an email for 30 days, how many follow-up emails are you going to get? So we've gone from being this sort of reactive industry into something much more proactive. And I know technology's played its part, but I think the biggest part's been played by the talent and by our clients pushing us to get there. And I think that's made us ever more attractive. But we've got to get out there, we've got to nurture, we've got to develop, and we've got to really, help each other, focusing on the clients, help each other to make the industry, ever more attractive. And I think, from my perspective, I don't look back and say, the best years were behind me. I actually look forward and I say, I think the best years are yet to come. I've been very lucky to meet some great people and a wise man, South African leader, rugby, because I love my rugby, Francois Pienaar once said to me, he said, Rob, man will be done before work is done. And what he was saying is there's always going to be more stuff to do and it's going to be more and more exciting. We as individuals might not get to it, but we'll leave it in a better state for the next people to take it on.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So whilst I've got a couple more questions for Rob, but in the meantime, if you've got some questions, please put them forward. You can put them directly or in the chat stream and we'll put them to Rob. He has to leave us at 12:15, but if you can put them in the chat stream, that would be great. You can ask him pretty much anything you like within reason.
Absolutely. Go for it. If they're difficult questions, Roger, I'll just push them back to you, mate.
Yeah, I've had those this week, actually, some of them. No, it's been great, absolutely
And
great.
do you know what? The other interesting thing, Roger, I think actually, with most of the questions, most of the people actually know what the right answers are. Yeah. And I think that's what we've got to get also, whatever stage of life or a stage in our career, we've got to get better at listening to those answers because the answers are all over and everywhere. It's just, are we listening enough and encouraging them?
Yeah. Yes, very true. Very, very true. A question for you here. If you're look back to your 20s and 30s, or you were say you were 20 and 30 now, looking forward to the rest of your career, what 3 pieces of advice would you give somebody? If you sat in a bar with them, if you were back in Lime Street, you're sitting there, someone who's 23 or 24, just come into the market, and they said, Rob, how can I be successful? What would you say to them?
Well, I come back a little bit to what I've been saying. The first thing I would say is really appreciate the industry. We all generally start as specialists in one particular areas, but if you appreciate the industry, you can see the breadth of what it's got to offer. Second thing I would say is I think the opportunity is always much, much bigger than you think it is. So don't constrain the opportunity with your own thinking. Just understand the opportunity and really reflect on it. Appreciate the industry, the opportunity is bigger. And then the final one, which kind of links to it, is, do have the courage to seize the opportunities when they arise. We are in the industry of risks, whether that's, mitigating, paying for them, whatever. So I do think, that old adage of, don't count the days in the industry, which I think when I arrived, most people were, hence the retirement sort of comment I mentioned at the start. But I think don't count the days, make the days count. And I'm not saying everyone needs to end up as a CEO or whatever. You can be what you want to be, and that's incredibly rewarding, fulfilling. And for me, if you can be in a luxurious position, which I think everybody on this call will be, when they look back and they really reflect on the memories that they've been able to create, it's those memories that will make you smile. When you're talking about the good old days, even though actually the good old days are probably the better days are now than what they were, there for everybody.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think when, what I learned is when someone gives you an opportunity and you think to yourself, oh, I'm not sure I can do that. I always said, yeah, I can do that. Even if I wasn't 100% convinced I could, I pushed myself, and then to say that took me all around the world. And I didn't know when I was 17 and came into the market straight from school that I would end up, in all those different countries and end up with qualifications, reams of qualifications after my name. But it's because if you push yourself, you can do it. As you say, anything's possible. And what we've heard this week from people repeatedly, all of our expert speakers, is open your mind, because there are no restrictions, there are no limitations. You can go as far as you want to go.
And Roger, I just add on that. I think, that being curious is really, really important. But I would also sort of say is, do keep learning.
Yes.
It doesn't matter. You need to keep learning. There's always going to be new piece of technology. There's always going to be a new solution. There's always going to be a new client problem to solve. Let's keep learning and keep ourselves agile as we think about it going further forward.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, I don't know about you, Rob. I learn every day, and some of these things are not things I thought. Last night I was learning how to convert AVI files to MP4 to help with this conference. I mean, it's not something I would have thought as an insurance professional I'd be doing, but I am, and that's where I am. And I was actually relishing the opportunity to understand the technology behind it. So.
And Roger, I'm learning about loss adjusting. I'm learning about, insurtechs, how they can help. I've had that understanding from it. So what I'm saying, you're never too old, to continue learning. And I'm actually accelerating my learning right now. And it's exhausting because you act like a sponge, you're soaking everything up. So I can well imagine coming into the industry, what it must be like. But that's good muscle memory to get hold of, because I think that will stand everyone in good stead as we go through our careers.
No, definitely. And I've got the final question. We've got some great questions coming in from the audience, so keep them coming, please. That would be great. So looking forward, I mean, we find ourselves in a very unique position at the moment. It's sort of a sense of not knowing really what the immediate future looks like. But in terms of your priority, you've come into Charles Taylor, as you said, you came in, you were recruited in a period of lockdown effectively. You've come in and now you're managing virtually. How are you finding that, and how are you doing that?
Well, again, I think the important thing, I'll tell you how I'm finding it, but the thing I'm trying to do most of the time is find how other people are finding it. Because, I might think it's great, but if the others on the end of it, aren't appreciative, or they don't understand the sense of direction, or they're not, understanding why certain decisions are making or what things are changing, then that's feedback I need to have. So for me, I'm being as visible as I possibly can be, and as inclusive as I can be, as engaged as I can be. So every week, I have a sort of a state of the nation, sort of CEO sort of chat, where I answer just like this, any questions that anybody's got. I try and provide an update of, what's happening this week, what's coming up, what people should be looking out for. And then we can answer questions on that, or questions on anything. I pack my day with sort of talent conversations. We've had to get much smarter about how we performance manage Charles Taylor. So when I arrived, it was way too much. So it was all about, looking and showing and telling, and we've kind of turned that around to much more conversations, insights, and decisions. Because this sort of environment is important that you maximize that, and you don't spend hours just looking at the same number. Numbers don't change; it's what you do differently that might change the sort of numbers. So that's been a sort of a big pathway, and then just being really thoughtful around how come in the new, as we go through the next weeks, months, years, I'm passionate about how do we build momentum. Yes. How do we make ourselves a simpler organization? How do we enrich our brand? How do we, find the future customers and look after our existing ones? How do we nurture, develop, grow talent? I mean, Charles Taylor is going to be a growth story. It's that's the plan. And I think, for most of the companies that are all of you that are on this sort of, webinar and call today, companies want to have momentum. It's growth stories. People are going forward. It's the same way as individuals. When you go forward, it's enriching. It allows you to broaden your mind, and so it is with companies. So I'm very excited about actually the industry as a whole. I think that it's very well equipped, thanks to great talent, and I think thanks to probably a lot better quality leaders coming through now than frankly, we've had, and I'll put myself in it. I think, the leader that takes over from me will be miles better than I was, and I'm sure that the one who takes over from her or him will be, even better as well. So I think, this is a really cracking industry to be in. The opportunity is great. We're moving into that, positive, problem solving. Don't lose sight of common sense. Someone always said to me, it's never as common as you expect. So, particularly in this environment, question, whether that's, why I'm asking to do this, engage. And I think it can be incredibly fulfilling for our clients, for ourselves, and for our companies.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's really, really interesting. So I think we've got, I'm conscious of time, so I want to get some questions in, Rob, if that's all right. We've got questions, quite a few questions coming in. One from Harry. Harry from Tizers is asking around the whole PPL and white space, and is it, are these sort of are these platforms that effectively are strong enough, or do we need to enhance them? Is there room for improvement on them? I mean, PPL has grown considerably since lockdown occurred. We did events prior to lockdown, and there was a degree of skepticism with some people about it. Other people were, using it and were happy. But then, of course, that's changed, and now the figures have gone skybound for PPL in our market. So what's your thoughts on the whole sort of electronic placing environment?
You know what I mean? I think you're spot on, really. I mean, when I reflect on it, if you look how much we've, brought ourselves forward over the last sort of eight months, I know it's difficult to judge. Some people sort of say, I think we're sort of we've done 5 years of electronic placing in sort of 8 months. But I think, and there's still a lot more we can learn and do, and there's going to be refinements as there always is. But I think it's going to be an ever bigger factor. Yeah. But don't forget that underlying capability of it is the people that problem solve the pain and gain points. Those are the people. Yes. We can get electronics is help, but it's how we guide electronics to do the right problem solving that's going to be critical. So we need the right talent. I think leadership is much more open for, faster change in the industry, faster modernization than we have. We still got, challenges with legacies, but I think we're getting smarter at how we cope with that and how we problem solve, more together as well. I think one of the challenges from the industry in the past has been a little bit, it was a competitive advantage. People saw competitive advantages in areas where actually in reality we'd be better off solving as an industry than as competitors. The real competitive advantage may be actually a different battleground than just technology in some cases.
Yes. And when this thing is all over, when we go back to normal, which, everybody's confident we will, then, are we going to go backwards? Will we see sort of the some of the electronic tools that we're using, especially around placing, I'm talking about in particular, will we see people reverting to old ways, I suppose? What's your view on that?
I think that really depends on whether we let that happen. Yeah. I think that's we have individual responsibility, we have collective responsibility. My sense here is, if we've appreciated it, we can see the value. I think, we will be driving it forward. And I think, you could answer the question as well. Do you think people will need to be back in the office as much as they were in the past? My gut and facts tell me everyone I've ever spoken to probably feels, no, I won't need to be, every single day there in the office. I can do my work. I've proven it. So I would like to think our muscle memory has changed. It's had to change. I think the challenge for us is how we continue to improve, and not just almost stop where we were and say, wow, we've moved 5 years forward in 3 months. If we've proven we could do that, then what can we do in the next 3 months? Could we do another 5 years in the next 3 months? That will be the challenge. I think this sort of group and the next generation of leaders should really be thinking about how do they problem solve for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you very much, Rob, for that. Harriet asks, how would you advise a young professional to prevent themselves from getting siloed or stuck in one particular class of business? How can they effectively open up more possibilities and options for themselves?
So I would say 2 things. Number one is, do ensure your network is strong and that it's not just within the sphere or silo that you are. So that whether that's a broader network within the company that you're in, or with the broader industry through these. But most importantly, also, continue your own curiosity and desire. If you're interested and you want to kind of learn and you want to broaden, then, I think you'll find it's very easy to do, because this is, our industry is, it's very sociable in the broadest sense of that word. And so I think, there are plenty of opportunities out there to maintain that breadth of understanding of kind of what's going on. And also what I would say is, what I'm seeing is there's a much, much, much greater desire for, leaders and those that have had a long time in the career to do sort of mentoring. So reach out to people that you feel you might want to sort of benefit by their sort of mentoring, because it's, everyone's very happy, just as I've been for this last sort of 40 minutes, to talk about the past and what a wonderful time, I've had. So, and share experiences. And I hope in and amongst all of it, there's one nugget that might be helpful to each and everyone here. But that's another great way of also kind of just keeping those silos, and they will have, because of where they've ended up, breadth of knowledge and connections, and be able to keep you connected.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, when I get asked this question a lot by groups of young people in the market about how you can sort of move on and grow. And I say, and how I did it was, I spent sort of 90% or 95% of my time focusing on the job that I was given, on the tasks that I was given. And then I spent 5% of my time actually focusing on me in terms of my market sort of presence and my market activities, attending things like this, going to sessions, going to sort of evening drinks functions that were going when a company said they were going to do so. And you always come away from those sessions, whether it's this one or a physical one, having learned some extra things, met some new people, and that network, as you say, Rob, is just invaluable as you move forward.
Yeah, and now there's more and more ways of creating that sort of network on a virtual basis. You know, in our day, it was all kind of physical, but now it can be physical and, you know, virtual. So it's there. If you want it, everything is there.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thank you very much for that. Chris here talks about the sort of the people in the market being recycled. So she says there seems to be a tendency for individuals to keep being recycled in the market as tried and tested, leaving minimal opportunities for upcoming talent to be given a chance, particularly in senior roles. How can we break down that barrier?
That's very, I mean, that's an interesting question. That's an interesting also, you know, perception. You can look at it as good or bad. So for the individuals themselves, it's always good to be recycled. I happen to be with, I forgot, was it Harriet or whatever, that actually we've got to challenge ourselves to find new solutions. And, you know, old problems don't necessarily solve the new solutions. So I think the way we have to think about that is, you know, there'll be pressure from clients in terms of solutions they're looking to achieve, and, you know, that recycling will kind of have its day. I think also you can see, fast forward, you know, what we've been through the last sort of 8 months, you know, this will weed out who are decent managers, decent leaders, and you will see, and you are seeing in a number of companies, you know, significant kind of change. So, and I think, you know, at the end of the day, also, you know, make the system kind of work for you. You know, if you're in a firm that is regrettably just doing that, then, you know, you need to find somewhere else that isn't, you know, and you will have a great talent. You'll be able to find a better place where you can, you know, go to companies that aren't doing that, because I do believe that we need, as companies, to continue to refresh ourselves. Yeah. You know, and the one thing we all talk about, you know, change, right? And I remember once doing a big sort of, you know, discussion group, and they were saying, and this is when I was there, oh, there's a lot of change, Rob, you're doing a lot of change. And I said, no, for me, it's choices. We have a choice. Do we want our current financial performance, which is going to lead us down this path? Do we want a different financial performance? Do we want to serve our clients this way, or do we want to serve them better? And each choice we make will then inform what we need to do differently in order to achieve a different outcome. So I really hope that more and more of the leaders today, because they themselves have got there, you know, hopefully they will try and refresh as well. Certainly I'll make that my commitment, and I won't stay around for too long either. Once, you know, you won't see me here in my 70s, that's for sure.
I mean, across
or even 60s with a bit of luck. Yeah, exactly.
Well, look, we've got some more questions there, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you those, because I'm conscious of time and stuff, and we've got obviously the interview with John Neal following immediately.
Got the main event coming now, Roger. The main event.
Oh no, absolutely! It's a double bill today. It's a double bill. Absolutely. Look, it's been absolutely fascinating, Rob. Thank you so much for joining. I'm going to send you the other questions personally, and then if you get a chance to answer them, I can send them back to the wider audience. They're generic questions, but it'd be great if you could answer them. But obviously, I'm conscious of time.
Great pleasure. Thank you very much for having me, and enjoy the rest of the day and enjoy what John's got to say, and I'm sure you'll have a lot of fun. He's a great guy. We've known each other for a while. So thank you, Roger, for what you've done, and thank you to everyone for putting me up and listening to me. It's been great to connect with you all.
Thank you so much, Rob. We'll see you. Keep safe, and we'll see you soon.
London Market Forums, bringing insurance professionals together.